E1 players. Today on the show, Stefania Beldrosby to tell you who's in and who's out for week number 10. Plus, crystal ball projections, and there's more Ezekiel Elliott news. But first, Secret Squirrel, today's show will be... Ooh...
Kind of cringy, again.
Not kinda. Not kinda. So one of the greatest quotes in football history came from the late, great Dennis Green after a primetime Arizona Cardinals loss in 2006. They are who we thought they were. Oh, hi, Bitterberry. You want to take care of this? Excuse me for a second. Have at it, Bitterberry. I'm going to turn my back to the camera and drink this glass of water. Yeah. They are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook. Good job, Bitterberry. And that water was refreshing. Anyway, listen, last night's game reminded me of that quote because, well, the Cardinals and the Seahawks showed that, from a fantasy perspective, they are who we thought they were. Yesterday on the show, right, we told you Russell Wilson, Larry Fitzgerald, Doug Baldwin, all must-starts. And, well, they showed that they were. All three scored more than 14 fantasy points in PPR. You're happy you started them. We also told you we thought Adrian Peterson was a risky play and that he would struggle. He did. Just 29 yards on 21 carries plus a fumble, just 3.2 fantasy points. In games where the Cardinals do not have a big lead, which could be all of them, Peterson will likely continue to struggle due to Arizona's upcoming schedule and their shaky offensive line. You want some new analysis off of last night's game? Fine, here you go. If you are desperate at tight end, Jermaine Gresham could be an option going forward with Drew Stanton. He's now scored in each of Drew Stanton's last 2 starts. He had 7 targets last night. He's now in the tight end 2 conversation. And you still shouldn't take any Seahawks running backs, right? With Eddie Lacy out, Thomas Rawls got the #1 job last night. He ran with it for 2.7 yards per carry, 12 touches, 39 total yards, much of that coming on just one 23-yard carry. Chris Carson, who hasn't played since week 4, still the team leader in rushing. I mean, no Seahawks running back should be on your team. Oh, hi, Bitterberry. Let me take one more sip of water. If you want to add a Seattle back, add their ass, but they are who we thought they were. So Ezekiel Elliott is finally going to begin his suspension this week. I think, reportedly, presumably. And well, the fantasy implications of this are something we have covered for a very long time. Honestly, I don't have anything new to add. Can we just, Kat, can we just roll all the old clips?
What a time to be alive here in September of 2017, Matthew. Despacito is at the top of the charts, and Odell Beckham and Aaron Rodgers are both healthy, and they will surely stay that way the entire season.
That they will, present time squirrel. But one player who will not be in the lineup deep into November, or I'll surely go bald in shock, Ezekiel Elliott. In fact, he may miss week 10. So if you have room on your bench, pick up as many of Alfred Morris, Darren McFadden, and Rod Smith as you can get. Then see who grabs a hold of the job, and you can drop the rest. Just seems like we've had this conversation before, Daniel.
It does seem that way. What a groovy time we're in here in the 1970s disco club, Matthew.
Right on, Funky Squirrel. This hit tune is far out.
Yeah, it is.
Just like Ezekiel Elliott might be this week. I think Alfred Morris, Darren McFadden, and Rod Smith will get all the touches on Sunday of week 10 in 2017, way in the future.
Oh, yeah.
And if the Cowboys, well, eventually they'll go to the hot hand. One of those guys will emerge, and if you have that guy, your fantasy team will be staying alive in the playoffs. Oh, yeah. Get it? It's the name of a popular song of these current times that we're in.
Yeah, we are. Well, howdy, partner Matthew. What do you say we drink some whiskey and then go to the saloon and maybe get on our horses and shoot some cactuses and whatever our contemporaries do here in the 1880s?
Oh, yeah, Secret Cowboy. But first, hold on to your chaps, because Ezekiel Elliott may be out in week 10 of 2017. Cowboys are playing Atlanta, and the Falcons have allowed just 4 rushing touchdowns this season, making it not a great matchup for any of the 3 running backs who could get carries. Now, Let's go cheat at cards and get into a saloon fight using our cowboy punches.
Woo-hoo! I love cowboy punches.
Seems like we've had this conversation before, though.
It really does. Matthew, you help me bludgeon woolly mammoth so we may gnaw me off bones in very unevolved manner.
Okay, prehistoric squirrel. But first, me must break down fantasy implications of Ezekiel Elliott, possibly missing Week 10 of 2017 weigh-in future. I think Alfred Morris get bulk of carries, but McFadden better pass catcher, limiting Morris value in PPPR leagues. Prehistoric points per reception, of course.
You make bad joke.
Careful, or me eat you.
Huh.
Rod Smith, very interesting to Matthew. Talented but inexperienced. Time will tell who emerges, but if me had to start one against Atlanta, me go with Morris. But due to playing time, he only shaky flex. Yabba dabba do.
Hey, look at that T-Rex's stoop short arms.
Whoa.
Ah!
So I've been asked one question a ton over the last 24 hours on Twitter.
When will Daniel Dopp, the real star of this show, get his own spin-off?
No, interrupting squirrel. You're the only one who tweets me that question. Actually, the real question that I've been getting the most is this. Should I add Martellus Bennett to my fantasy team? And I've got a very simple answer. No, you should not. Look, I get why the Patriots picked him up, right? He was available. There's history there. Gronk, obviously injury-prone. Patriots hoping for another Super Bowl. It's a good ad for New England, but not a good ad for your fantasy team. Last year, Martellus Bennett, tight end 15 on a per-game basis, meaning he was barely a borderline starter in a deep league at best, even when healthy. Bennett held to single-digit fantasy points in 10 of 16 games last year, and specifically, single digits in 5 of 8 games when Gronk was healthy, which obviously Gronk is now. And of Bennett's career-high 7 touchdowns he had last year with the Patriots, 3 of them came in a game against the Browns, which honestly shouldn't even count. Not counting that crazy Browns game, right? Martellus Bennett averaged 8.7 fantasy points per game when Gronk was healthy, which last year would have been tight end 21. And by the way, that's even if Martellus Bennett is healthy, which is no guarantee, so no thank you. If you are desperate for a flyer on a tight end this weekend, how about Garrett Selleck of the 49ers? No George Kittle this week. Selleck going to play the Giants. New York has allowed a touchdown to an opposing tight end in every single game this year. So we like to have fun with Secret Squirrel on this show, right? We've drowned him, we put him in stupid outfits, we forced him to make me fresh juice, we even made him into a marionette puppet. And literally all of that was just in the last few days. But here's something that I want to admit. I actually greatly respect Daniel Dopp. Veterans Day is tomorrow, and our own Secret Squirrel, Daniel Dopp, served our country in the Air Force for 6 years. In fact, Secret Squirrel is his nickname from that because he was in intelligence in the Air Force, and that's where that nickname comes from. So, Secret Squirrel, I just want to turn to you and say, thank you so much for your service. What did being in the Air Force mean to you?
I mean, I'll be honest, being able to do this for a living where I can talk about fantasy football with you and do fun stuff like this, being able to fight for that freedom for people to be able to make their own choices and have their own expression and to be able to do that, that's really what I wanted to be able to fight for, and that's what my military service meant to me. So,
well, we're thrilled to have you part of the staff. We're honored to have you here. Like, tremendous amounts of respect for all of you, and that photo is amazing. How old are you in that photo?
I was 23 years old when this photo was taken, and man, it feels like 100 years ago.
I can imagine. That photo should never go away. It's amazing. Well, in all seriousness, tremendous amounts of respect for you. Thank you for your service. And I want to thank everyone, servicemen and women past, present, and future, and their families for the sacrifices they have made for all of us. It's a very small gesture, but it's the least we can do here at the Fantasy Show to thank everyone for their service. Beam, this is how we make history. How will you make your Jaguars making history this season? They're one of the best pass defenses in recent memory, allowing the fewest fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks by any defense in the last 15 years. That's a big reason why Philip Rivers makes my hate list this week. All right, time now for Week 10 wide receiver over-under projections. As always, Daniel, we bring in our very own crystal ball to set the line.
First up, Crystal, we have Demaryius Thomas.
I spoke to the moon. She made me a promise. 14 points even for Demaryius Thomas.
By the way, don't actually believe you speak to the moon, but I'm going to take the under here. Listen, since week 3, Broncos, 4 passing touchdowns in 6 games. Like, they've been really inefficient on offense. You think about the Patriots defense always wanting to take away who the best player is. I think that's going to be Demaryius Thomas. They've given up just 2 passing touchdowns to wide receivers in the last 4 games. I'm going under on Demaryius Thomas as Emmanuel Sanders gets healthier.
I'm going to take the under as well. Last week, the only reason he got to this was because of a garbage time touchdown. I just don't see it happening. So, in 5 of the last 8 games, he's been under this mark. So, I'm taking the under.
Yeah, wide receiver 2 this week, not a wide receiver 1. Who's next up?
Next up, Sterling Shepard.
Eye of Newt Stew sees the future when salted and peppered. The Cauldron foresees 13 points for the Giants' Sterling Shepard.
Wasn't expecting a recipe today, Secret Squirrel. I'm taking the over here. You know, even that's an aggressive number. The fact of the matter is, here's a guy that got 9 targets last week, 25% of Eli's target share here. You think about the 49ers, who have allowed 38 different red zone drives this season. That's most in the NFL. You can throw against them. By the way, Shepard's been pretty good. Double-digit fantasy points in 4 of the 5 games where he's been 100% healthy and stayed throughout the game. No Beckham in this game, obviously. Give me the over.
Absolutely. I'm taking the over, too. 5 for 70 last week against the Rams, and the 49ers are not the Rams' defense. I'm taking the over on that one. Next up, Marvin Jones.
My visions cannot be eclipsed, be it solar or lunar. Hence, I see 11.8 points for Marvin Jones Jr.
I didn't know where that was going, but
That
the
was
junior,
pretty
that's
good.
nice. That's well done,
That was
actually.
good.
Nice, John Crystal. Last 3 games, he's been the #1 fantasy wide receiver. You know this as a Lions fan, Secret
yeah.
Squirrel. Only Antonio Brown getting more targets per game than Marvin Jones since week 5. So it's not just a couple of lucky touchdowns. The volume is there, and I like the matchup with the Browns, who've allowed 16 passing touchdowns so far this year. That's tied for 3rd most in the NFL.
Yeah, and the Lions struggle to run the football. I mean,
Yep.
they're trying with Amir Abdullah, but they're definitely, I'll be honest, Matthew Stafford and Marvin Jones, their chemistry rivals the chemistry that you and I have right on this show. So I see him taking the over on that one.
Yeah, I agree with you. Nice job.
All right, T.Y. Hilton.
Matthew's predictions stink like a block of old Stilton.
Wow.
But my rhymes smell like roses. 11 points for T.Y. Hilton.
What's Stilton? Do you know?
I don't know at all. Yeah,
It's cheese, you dummies.
Cheese. All right, fair enough. Fair enough. Nice job on the cheese dictionary here. You know what I'm going to do with T.Y. Hilton? I'm taking the under here. Look, he's matchup dependent. In games in which the Colts have lost, he's averaging less than 9 points in each game. I expect the Steelers to win this game. They're the #2 defense against opposing wide receivers so far this year. 3 of the last 4 games, T.Y. Hilton under 5 fantasy points. That floor is so low, it makes me nervous. Give me the under here.
Yeah, and he has a crazy high ceiling when he has a good matchup. We've seen that. We saw that last week.
Yeah.
This is not a good matchup against the Steelers, so I'm going to take the under on this one as well.
All right, we're 4 for 4. Who's next?
Last one, Jordy Nelson.
Hockey legends and autumnal vegetables can be quite gourdy. You know what's next, Matthew. Here it comes. 10.6 points for Nelson, comma, Jordy.
Yeah, you're cracking yourself up, Crystal. I like that. Look, in the 2 Brett Hundley starts, he has a total of 9.8 fantasy points, so under the projected total of 10.6 here. Look, he's a guy that needs to get deep. Obviously, Hundley not throwing the ball deep at all. Hasn't had more than 80 receiving yards all season long. He is touchdown dependent. I think it's unlikely he gets into the end zone here. Since week 5, Bears a top 5 fantasy defense against opposing wide receivers. Chicago's underrated.
Oh, yeah, they've been a fantastic defense, and this is how I decide if Jordy Nelson is going to meet his over-under. Is Brett Hundley the quarterback?
He is.
No, he is not going to make the over.
There
so
you
I'm
go.
taking the under on that one.
Understood. All right. Thank you. Fabricio and Marcello are in the house. You know what that means. Time once again for Show Me Where It Hurts. And that means Stefania Bell is here once again. All right, Stefania, let's get right into it. A lot of injuries. Matt Forte, show me where it hurts.
Well, Matt Forte dealing with soreness in that right knee, the same knee, Matthew, that he had arthroscopic surgery on at the end of last season. He had swelling after last Thursday night's game and just was not able to get into practice. He's actually been ruled out already for this week. Now, the Jets do have a bye next week, so there's some additional time, but the fact that it's taken so long and he still hasn't been able to do anything, you may need to be concerned even beyond this week.
Obviously, Bilal Powell, to me, becomes a top 10 play. Elijah McGuire, certainly worthy of flexing. Think about weeks 4 and 5 earlier this year when Forte was out. Bilal Powell running back 8, Elijah McGuire running back 16 during that time. Of course, in week 5, Powell left that game early with an injury. but certainly like both guys this week against a Bucs defense that allows the 5th most fantasy points to opposing running backs.
One more quick note. That swelling in Forte's knee came after a season-high carry, so even when he does come back, may not get as much work.
Let's talk about Dez Bryant now, Stefania. What's going on with the Cowboys wide receiver? Show me where it hurts.
A sore ankle and a sore knee, Jason Garrett revealed to us after last week's game. Dez left early because of that ankle, but then has not practiced so far this week because of the ankle and the knee. Now, the plan for Friday was to get him back in limited practice. Both Dez and Jerry Jones say they expect him to play this week. So I do think he's going to try and give it a go, but we may not know officially until game time.
Yeah, and as much as Dez and Jerry Jones, ultimately it'll be the medical staff that makes that call, not Dez or Jerry. So let's watch out for that. Terrence Williams would get a big boost if Dez couldn't go. What about Julio Jones? Let's talk about another star wide receiver in that same game.
It's always a lower extremity issue with Julio, but he's a gamer and he's tough and he tries to play through them. This week it's an ankle injury. We saw him struggling a little bit sore in the game last week, but he gutted it out. He did finish. Didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday without catching some passes from Matt Ryan today, dressed for practice. So I imagine you're going to see Julio on the field this weekend. The only concern you have really in fantasy is that sometimes we see Julio out there gutting it out through something, but he's not quite as effective as you'd like him to be.
Been a disappointing season for Julio overall, but I think if he's active, you have to start him. But might be more targets from Mohamed Sanu, who I like as a wide receiver 3 with some upside this week. All right, Stefania, my Redskins have a home game against the Vikings. If they're going to beat Minnesota, they need Jordan Reed, as do the people who drafted him. What are the chances we see Jordan on Sunday?
I think it's still up in the air. We know Jordan Reed wants to play. He missed last week because of the hamstring injury. Was back doing a little bit of work this week, mostly individual drills, and apparently looked good doing them, but then not practicing on Friday. Now, whether that's resting him up a little bit to make sure that they have the best chance of having him Sunday, or whether it's something to be concerned about, it's not clear yet. So for fantasy, you're going to want to stay tuned to what happens with Reed right up until game time. We have seen this team give him until the last minute to go before, and I think that could happen again.
Vernon Davis, by the way, been a top 6 tight end each of the weeks that Jordan Reed has missed this season. And what about his teammate, Jamison Crowder?
Another hamstring issue and a soft tissue injury for a wide receiver, always tough because they can't get to top speed, can't accelerate. And that's what Jamison Crowder talked about last week. He expressed concern that even though he felt good, he just couldn't play at a competitive level. Well, resting last week probably helped him going into this week. He, too, participating in one-to-one primarily, but I expect Jamison Crowder to take the field this weekend.
Which is great news, having said that Minnesota's allowed just 1 touchdown and the second fewest yards to people out of the slot. So, which is where Crowder plays the majority of his snaps there. So, might be a tough go for Crowder fantasy-wise on Sunday. Thank you, Stefania. Thank you, Minions.